Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Welcome back to our series where we talk to people from across the hobby world about their experiences of being in the hobby. Today I'm very lucky to have Georgie with me. If you don't know, Georgie's from Hellstorm Wargaming, which is a really great YouTube channel here in hot England. Yeah, so Georgie, you want to introduce yourself and just talk a little bit about what you do?
Absolutely. So hi, I've already been excellently introduced. Thank you so much. But yeah, I'm Georgie. I'm part of Hellstorm Wargaming adjacent, I like to say. And yeah, I do all kind of things, YouTube, podcasting, streaming for Warhammer and anything else kind of in the nerd sphere, really. I don't like to put myself in a box. I like to branch out a little bit and all kind of different things. I'm very thankful to be here. It's always a joy to speak to you and see you. So thank you for
It's
having
really
me.
great. No worries. Thank you for coming on. Like I said to you before we start recording, this series, as well as being, I think, a really cool way to get to know people for the audience, is my excuse to just call people who I really wanted to talk to. If you're familiar with this series and the format, we have a bunch of questions that we ask that explore people's hobby and the kinds of experiences that we have being hobbyists who aren't necessarily in the sort of mainstream or majority demographic of Warhammer hobbyists, right? My first question for you is how did you get into the hobby? What kind of models do you like to paint? And have you been doing this a long time?
I was reading through these questions, like prepping myself, doing like a mini interview with myself when I was cooking dinner. And I realised that I've been involved in this hobby. I did the maths and it's been something like nearly 10 years now, over 10 years, I think it must be.
Amazing.
Must be about 11 or so. Similarly to a lot of people, when you're a teenager, when you're in college, all the little edgy, nerdy kids, that was kind of my group of people. I think when you're in that group of people, I was one of the comic book kids. Right. And I think when you're in that kind of community, everything else adjacent to it is always kind of in your peripheral vision. And it wasn't until I got to just before I went to uni, I always kind of knew what Warhammer was. But then before I went to uni, so I was about 17, one of my friends who I work with, my good friend James, he gave me a lift home from work one night and I saw he had, do you remember like the hard cases, the big hard cases? He had one of those in the back of his car and I go, oh, Warhammer, that's cool. When I moved to uni, one of my flatmates, who I still talk with really regularly, we were at a moving in day, and he was putting up Warhammer posters in his bedroom. And again, I was like, Warhammer! I know what that is.
Yeah.
We like kind of would go to the board game clubs, and whenever it was a Saturday, we'd nip into town and go to the Games Workshop. But it was kind of after I graduated when I kind of got deep into the hobby, because that's when I started working at a game store where we would sell Warhammer, we would run Warhammer tournaments. So that's when it kind of became a really, really present part of my life. It was my livelihood for like 6 years. You know, I did that for a long time. So yeah, a little bit different, I think, in terms of coming at it from like a professionalized job route, maybe. That's when it kind of really got its claws into me.
Yeah.
But in terms of the things I like to paint the most, and I think everyone can attest to this. I'm not a batch painter. I love my little characters. I love anything interesting, anything fun, anything really natural as well. So I like Sylvaneth and things like that. Anything like creatures, trees, plants. That's boring. I want like wild, fun things.
Yeah.
You know? Definitely that for me.
And did you stay into it? Because a lot of people like drop in and out after they finish uni. But did you like? Sounds like you just got in. Were like, well, this is it, ride or die.
Literally, it was like, this is me now, I guess. It honestly, it was very that, because when I moved up to Southport, I always say to people, you should always do what you can to try and find a third place. So like you've got your home, which is your first place, your work, which can be your second place, but then try and find a third place that nourishes other bits of you. So like your passions and your hobbies and stuff. And when I first moved up, my third place became a gaming store that I would then go on to work at for 6 years.
I think the hobby is so great for like finding and making friends though, isn't it? Like wherever you go. It's a bit, I guess it's a bit like being into football or whatever. I don't know. I'm not into football. But like wherever you turn up and whoever you talk to, if you know they like the same thing, you're already, you know, one or two, I guess, like conversations deep into a friendship.
It's definitely, there's always kind of a commonality between people who like similar things, especially something like this that isn't, people get into it for different reasons, but I think a lot of people get into it have very similar personality traits. They might not be the same people, but they have a lot of things that you can find a lot of commonality there.
Went to Warhammer World recently, the time that we met, and I talked to a bunch of people for the first time, and it feels like you're not talking to them for the first time, because you're all into this thing and we all have like shared framework, I guess. So you've been in the hobby for ages.
I didn't realize, and then I was thinking to myself as I was stirring the pasta, and I was like, it's been over a decade. Oh my goodness, that's a long time.
That is a long time. What is it like being a woman or a femme presenting person in the hobby and within YouTube and streaming?
It's interesting because, as we've established, I'm old. But when I started working for a living in this industry, it was tough, and it was a good while ago. And one of my favorite moments, and I still talk to people about this, was when somebody phoned up to ask if we had a piece of Warhammer terrain, and I said, I'm really sorry, we don't have it in stock at the minute. And the person on the other end of the phone goes, can you just put someone else on the phone to look for it for me, please? And I went, oh no, I promise, I know, I know, but I promise we don't have it, I'm looking at the shelf. And he goes, can you put the manager on the phone, please? And I said, I am the manager, and I am on the phone, and I'm telling you that we don't have it. And he went, is there anybody else who could look? And you know in your heart it's because you hear a more feminine sounding voice. It's incredibly frustrating. So often I would be sitting there telling people, kind of giving them advice on what paints to buy or talking about some new releases. And I would say once a week I would get the question, do you like this, or do you just work here? It's impossible to work here without liking this. You can't do it. I think when you move into kind of the YouTube and streaming world, it's tough. And it's so sad that I have to say that I feel lucky for not getting terrorized on the internet for being a femme presenting person engaging in this hobby. When I know that there are so many creators out there, women, femme presenting people, non-binary people, who get so much flack for just existing and enjoying a game. And it's so sad that I can say I feel lucky to have kind of swerved that a little bit. It's so bizarre to me that there's just this completely unbridled and unfounded vitriol for people enjoying a game. Back when I started, say 7 years ago, back then I was part of a gaming YouTube channel as well, and it was, content creation was very, very different then, I think, as well. Like, this is pre-TikTok, pre-Instagram Reels. Instagram was the place to go, and YouTube was huge. So we did a weekly live stream at the shop where we'd show off new releases, talk about Warhammer, talk about any new games we had in Magic the Gathering and stuff like that. And it was clearly, sounds like something that's been stolen by Hellstorm Wargaming, actually, a Wednesday night stream talking about new things. It's become so much more accessible to everybody, this hobby, which I love. But with that accessibility, you're opening doors for people to just be horrible, which is really sad, I think.
Yeah.
And I think
find that it's wild how much there is in that like seedy underbelly of hateful stuff that I never even see, right? So like it bubbles up and someone will comment like blah 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 blah, gatekeep this, brothers, or whatever, the junk that they put. And I'll click on that person's profile and there's channel after channel after channel after channel that's huge. The gatekeep bros, or keep the hobby pure, or whatever, like all of that kind of stuff. And you're like, these channels are bigger than the big channels that I watch, and I didn't even know they exist. And they seem to primarily exist to make this space harder for me and my friends, which just blows my mind.
It's true, isn't it? And I think there's a risk that you kind of make a little echo chamber, because I know it's so easily done, like especially on things like Twitter and things like that. I'm quite liberal with the block button. Like, I could never have interacted with somebody, but if I see that they're making life difficult for someone that I like and that I respect, or just anybody who's a human being and doesn't deserve that treatment, it's the trash taking itself out. It baffles you, because when you don't see it and you don't engage with it, you kind of have a little blissful moment of ignorance, of forgetting that it's there. But then, as you say, when it does creep up, it's just shocking how prominent it can be. And that's why I think language matters so much, and the way that people interact with things and the language that people use, up to and including the creators of the game, is of vital importance, because if you give someone a stick with which to beat other people with, they can feel vindicated in these feelings that they have. I think it can become really dangerous, which is so sad, because we all just want to play our game and paint our minis.
Paint them little toy soldiers in bright colours that look like a pride flag, and then so people can tell me to kill myself.
It was my favourite tweet ever, when you were like, you know what? I'm gonna make it gayer. Yeah,
that tweet went ridiculous.
It popped off.
I go back to the conversations, because that tweet was taken, like the guy who said blah blah blah, gay stuff out of my hobby. That tweet was a conversation that, do you know Christy? She was having a conversation with that guy, and she's still having a conversation with that guy, and they're not getting, it's been like 2 weeks, and they're not going away. And I just took a screenshot of his tweet and was like, you know what, it's going to be gayer. Put 3 random photos of things that I've painted that are nice and colourful, and like 2 days later it was on like 4,000 likes.
As it should be.
Nuts.
As it should be.
But yeah, I like that that is the stuff that gets the attention, shows that we're going in the right direction, I think, or that I'm in a quite good echo chamber, which I don't mind actually. I'd quite like to be in an echo chamber where people don't tell me to kill myself.
I think that's a completely reasonable thing to want.
I think so. We've had a bunch of content creators on, most of the people who we have had on this show, but just by virtue of who I know, everyone's kind of said the same things, like it's hard, but it's worth having those conversations anyway. What was it like going behind the scenes at Warhammer World for the Heresy event, and painting that big army that we all saw on the open day?
It was amazing. I couldn't believe I was even there. The imposter syndrome was hitting big style, I think. I was in, the room with all these fantastic people, a lot of who are my friends already. The job I had at the game store, we used to run tournaments quite a lot. And it's so bizarre to think that back then our 80 to 120 person tournaments were like the biggest in the UK, when now that's just a weekend, isn't it? Like, it shows how far the hobby has come. But there were a lot of people there that I kind of knew from back then, which was quite nice, because I was getting really like, I don't deserve to be here, everyone's really amazing and so successful. And so it was quite nice when, like, Lawrence Baker comes up and gives me a hug. He's like, God, I haven't seen you for ages, and I feel a little bit vindicated. But it was insane. It was so amazing to be a part of it. And I think the effort that went into creating that event and putting all of these people together to create something like that was really, really important. And I think it goes to show that the hobby and the game is better when we're together. And it was great, because there were so many people that I was friends with, but so many people that I desperately wanted to be friends with. And I was like, I love you, can we be friends now, please? Like, it was so cool. Like, I got to meet Electric Eve, and I was like, I love you so much. And now we're like buddies and stuff. You forget, I think. It's really easy to forget, because Games Workshop is so kind of omnipresent, especially in our lives, right? I think it was worth more than the fishing industry in Brexit, and it's been like the top performing UK business for like 3 years or something. My stats might be off, but it's something to that effect.
This isn't a stats show, you can say what you like.
I think you forget when you go there that with a company that big, every single person that works there is just so invested in what they do, and they love it so much. And you can just see, like, we bumped into just Darren Latham just trotting around as it's nothing, and you get to chat with people, and he goes, how long have you been in the UK for? And I went, 28 years. I was born here. And he goes, oh, okay. Between meeting the other content creators that I hadn't met before and seeing kind of the Wizard of Oz style, going into the studios and sitting behind the desk and feeling incredibly powerful. Of course, to get to that point, we had to paint an entire Iron Hands army, which was the less chill part of the whole thing, I think. I don't think I've ever painted something to completion that's that big. I help with like last minute trims on armies that are going to a tournament, and it's like, go and redo all of this. But to paint something from start to finish that's that big of a project with another person as well, because I'm very particular. So when you've got to kind of share and compromise, I'm not very good at that. So I think it was definitely a test, but it was really, really fun. I think they turned out all right. And it's a heck of a buzz seeing them in a cabinet at Warhammer World.
Yeah.
That was pretty rad. And seeing like a Warhammer community article says like, Georgie painted this. I'm like, yes, you did. Let's go. That was pretty wild. And obviously I got to see you as well.
I got to meet so many people that day that I was there with a friend of mine who is into Warhammer, but isn't as much into, I guess, Warhammer content consumption as I am. Like, I'm pretty into it. Like I pretty much watch everyone. And so I was there like, oh my god, that's Ninjon. Oh my god, that's Tabletop Tactics. Oh, there's M. And he was like, who are all these people?
Yeah.
I got to talk to Lawrence, which was really cool because I've followed Tabletop Tactics since like day one of Tabletop Tactics. And everyone's, and I said this, I think I said this before, but everyone's different heights to what I expect. Like Lawrence is so tall.
He's so tall, right?
And Ash from Guerrilla Miniature Games is much taller than I thought he was going to be. But it was the best day, I think. I
posted one of those things on Twitter that was like, how tall do you think I am? And people were saying, oh, I think you're like 5'5" or 5'2", and I was like, excuse me, I'm like 5'8", please. I'm not. It's weird, isn't it? Because you see from here up, so you've got no frame of reference.
I mean, you and I are basically about the same height, and I don't know if I had said that without knowing.
But no, it's nice to hear that you had such a good experience of it as like an attendee as well, because it was so busy. It was very, very hectic. And I mean, we had like schedules that we had to do stuff on, and obviously I think if you're just showing up on the day, it can be a little bit different because you've not got like a timetable that you've got to stick to. But I think there was a lot of stuff on, and like there was a lot of things happening, and I think everybody that did go kind of in attendance really enjoyed it as well.
I think for me, I just really enjoyed meeting people. Like so I went to a Forge World open day before the pandemic, and before I was really an online person, turned up, was like, oh, here's some new models.
Yeah.
I hit roll some dice. Like, oh, do you want to talk to Adam Troke? And I was like, I don't really know him, and I'm quite awkward. So I was like, no, I don't really want to talk to Adam Troke. Sorry, and I would leave, right? Whereas this time, now that I've been online for, 2 or whatever years, I know all these people. So when I turned up, I was like, oh, there's Josh. And then Adam Troke saw me and was like, hey, Annie. And like being able to talk to people and have those connections made that event so much better.
Massively. And it's so funny because like I think it was Twitter we first met on, wasn't it? It was Twitter. And it's the same with like Alex Quipster, who I've known for years from Instagram. And we like talk all the time, but I never met him before in person. So that was the first time I like saw him in person form. And the same with you. It's the first time I saw you as a human, not as an avatar. And it was like, oh, you're a real human being. Okay, that's wild. Like, but you have that sense of community and kinship with people who you might not have met in person, but then when you meet in person, it's like you've known each other for forever.
What do you think that the less marginalised people within the space, the hobby space, need to do to make the hobby as inclusive as possible?
I think the way that you worded that is really, really important as well, because I think a lot of the time, education and emotional labour and effort is always put upon a minority, when in actual fact, it's vital, if not essential, that people who do fit in with the status quo and who do have these platforms that have been afforded to them, of course through talent and hard work, but also through fitting in with a pre-existing binary. It's so important that people who have the platform, the pull, the range of viewers, that they stand up and they say something too, because it's work, it's all work, it's emotional labor, it's learning constantly and staying aware of things as well. It is unfortunately sometimes about getting out of the echo chamber and going to the dark side and seeing what people are saying, because you got to cite your sources, you got to see what people are saying, so you can really make sure that you're educating yourself on all of these different angles. And I think when people who have these platforms, who do kind of fit into the pre-existing binary, speak out, it makes it easier for people who don't fit into that space to feel more comfortable to do that, because you've got the backing of people like that. I understand, of course, wholeheartedly that I am coming at this from a position of privilege. I'm, femme presenting cisgender white woman who's here talking about this, and I do come at this from a privileged position. I acknowledge that. And yet there are still issues that I face, and there have still been times when I have felt like if I was to speak up about something quite vocally, that would not have been necessarily a safe thing for me to do for whatever reason. And I think when you weigh that up, it's just kind of collaboration and ongoing conversations really, really necessary. I think it's like I say, it's vital that it comes from people with the platforms, because even if the company themselves turn around and literally say, you will not be missed, doesn't matter. It's about other people holding other people accountable. It's about people who look like these these people who are being unfriendly and bigoted and cruel and mean. It's about people who look like them holding them accountable, I think. Because I think it can be really easy to fall into the trope of angry lady gets hysterical. Whereas if it's coming from somebody who you look up to, if it's coming from somebody who looks like you're going to pay more attention to it.
I find myself wanting a lot to go back on some things with people, and then thinking, actually, I'm not going to do that. And it's like sometimes like, let's just pull back, you know?
Good, no, I could talk about stuff like that forever, because like, it's like we were saying before about language as well. The language that people use is so important and so vital. And it goes from content creation to rules writing to social media engagement, because obviously there's that old adage of like, words only have the power that you give them, but that's not true. Words are imbued with sociological, historical, contextual, etymological meaning that it goes deeper than just someone saying, oh, well, you're offended at this XYZ. So it's a conversation you keep having.
That'd be cool. Okay, we've got one more question. We have one more question. And you said that you're really looking forward to answering this question. So I'm hoping for a fantastic answer. And that question is, in your ideal world, what does the future of our hobby look like?
In my ideal world, when I'm not, you know, drinking champagne on a yacht with Harry Styles and Kristen Stewart, this hobby, and Mikey can be there if he wants, but like, this hobby will be louder, it will be gayer, it will be more inclusive, it will be everything, and it will be so unapologetically. One of my favorite things about this hobby is the sheer variety of people that you can see in it. And it baffles me that in a world where there are these alien creatures and these, you know, pretend people and galaxies and tyranids, that you still somehow struggle to comprehend the fact that people could be non-binary, could be gay, could be a woman. Make it make sense, because it doesn't to me. Let's not even get started. I'm not the person to talk about it. You know, I don't have the experience to talk about it, but let's not get started about like skin tone as well in the hobby, in terms of how people paint things and the lore behind certain things and the missteps in the lore behind certain things. And it baffles me that you can have such wonder and such insane imagination, but can also be so kind of kneecapped by this desire to fit into some kind of heteronormative narrative to cater to a certain section of fans. So in the future, and what makes me really happy is that I can feel kind of the winds of change of this coming. Feel, as we said before, the winds of change of this coming, whether people like it or not, because it is the right thing to do. And the right thing isn't always easy. The right thing is sometimes really, really, really hard. But it is the right thing to do to make any single person who wants to engage in this hobby feel comfortable, feel seen, and feel welcome. And I really hope that, like you said, I'm gonna make it gayer. I'm gonna do it louder. I'm gonna do it harder. Yes, always. And I feel that if we keep going this way, it's always the people with the loudest voices who don't necessarily... You're entitled to your opinions, you're not entitled to the facts, okay? There are women that play this hobby. There are non-binary people that play this hobby. There are people of different races, different genders, everything that play this hobby. Just because you're shouting loud doesn't mean that doesn't exist. I think the future in my ideal world is people not being afraid to go to tournaments because they're scared of the atmosphere and who they're going to play. It's people not being afraid to post their whips on Whip Wednesday because they think someone's going to be horrible about the level of talent that they have in terms of painting or the level of accomplishment that they have. It's going to be where people feel really comfortable walking into a game store, be it a GW, be it a third-party seller, and saying, can you teach me how to play this? Or it's not going to be someone being too scared to start a podcast or a YouTube channel where they talk about it. It's going to be welcoming. That's what it's going to be to me, you know, for everybody. Yes. Everybody. Yes. I'm getting a bit after school special and a bit emotional, but that's what I want.
Let's do it.
To cry. Yes.
The rest of you can screw it. We are going to be here and we're going to do it. And yeah, and exactly. That is amazing, and that is exactly what we're trying to do here right now, this entire time, for the last hour, and for every video that's on my channel. That is what we're doing, and we're not going to stop. I'm not going to stop. And if you don't like the brightly coloured Eldar, you can screw off. Yeah, you're really boring.
Exactly. I'm so thankful for you, and I'm so thankful for what you do, because you are just this ray of positivity and of goodness and light and warmth. And you are so unapologetic in saying, like, grow up. It's a pretend game. Like, I'm having fun.
That's having the best time.
That's what you do in a game. And I think you are an incredibly inspiring force to be reckoned with when it comes to fighting for everybody's right to enjoy what they enjoy. And
Oh, thank you
I
so
love you for
much.
it.
That's amazing. Oh, well, let's just end there, right? Like on a high
Yeah,
note,
yeah,
on
the wrap,
praising
the bang.
me, on just riding my own little cloud. I'm great.